wisdom. Bless them with the ability to be able to communicate what they're thinking. God, and just guide and direct decisions that are made. And when there's times where people disagree, Lord, we just pray that you would help facilitate those conversations and that people would be able to get to the heart of the issues. God, I just pray that you would bless the families of each of our leaders here tonight too. Just bless them with health, with strength, and with wisdom. And we just thank you for your presence in guiding this group. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. We'll go ahead and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody, to tonight's meeting. We'll go ahead and move on to the next item of business, which is to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second. Motion by John, second by Mary. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Brings us to approving tonight's consent calendar, which is the minutes from the meeting of September 24th and the payment of bills.
Second.
Motion by Roy, second by Blake. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next item of business is a public hearing on the proposed assessments for the non-payment of delinquent utility bills. I don't know if anyone's here on that.
You want to talk about the delinquent utility?
Sure. The majority of the assessments today are from rental property owners. With our policy that we have in place, once the tenant moves out, it reverts back to the landlord's name. And once a new tenant comes in, we final out that account and the account goes into the new tenant's name. And we send that final bill out. These are the final bills that weren't paid. So we've sent them letters. Half of them did pay and these are the half that did not.
Some paid and some didn't, you said? How many didn't? Again?
There's 4 landlords on here with different accounts.
So the ones that, some of the ones that are in here have been paid?
No,
No, but you said the ones that did not.
they did not, yep.
We'll close the public hearing and we'll consider approval of resolution 1966 adopting assessment roll number 343.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Barry, second by Roy. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Move on to item number 7, which is to consider an outdoor event request for Christmas parade on November 30th, 2024.
This is a carryover item from a couple of weeks ago. We've got a request form in here, updated poster, promotional poster, and then also a proposed parade route in the packet. That basically starts right up by the water tower on 4th Street, comes down to 2nd Avenue, goes west over to 2nd, then up back to the north and the west side of the high school to Pleasant Avenue. And so it's a pretty short parade route being proposed. And so we got that in there. I don't know, Chief Larson, if you've had a chance to even look at that yet. You've got it this afternoon, but.
Gerald, what streets are they going to be closing for that then?
It would be the intersections along there. And, depending on how many parade entries, I'm, suspecting it won't be quite like railroad days.
Right.
It's going to be a lot shorter, so.
It'll just be one trip.
Yep.
Around.
Yeah. So I think the parade would go fairly quickly, and I think from our standpoint, we would place cones and barricades out at the intersection, set them out, have somebody monitor the intersection, and go pretty quick, so. And get everything opened back up. Still working on insurance. Last year when, and I can't remember if it was the downtown revitalization group and the historical society that did the one down there. And at that, for that event, the city actually ended up co-sponsoring the event, so it was covered under our policy. So I don't know if the council's okay with doing that again on this one for the parade. And then the other activities, the tree lighting is basically right kind of across the street to the west of the police department, and hot chocolate and that kind of stuff in the First International parking lot.
Yeah, I don't know, Missy, if she's talked to you, but how will that work, being that tree is right there at the tobacco shop, so it's gonna be on Second Avenue like that? For people and. So they'll just have to be in the parking lot of the tobacco place or something. I know when we had it over here, and there's people running across to the depot for the lighting and.
Yeah, and I haven't heard anything. I don't know if you have, Blake, if the Historical Society is still planning to do a tree at the depot.
Sounded like the last time I heard was that they would plan accordingly to put theirs up the exact same night and almost do it simultaneously,
I know,
so.
Tom Kyer historically has kind of tackled that project. And
They meet on Thursday, the 10th, and I think they're going to discuss this at that meeting, what I understand. And I talked to Lisa and Tom, I think they are planning on putting the tree up as far as I know. They're going to get it from their usual source and put it up. So.
And then on the map here where it says vendors, which would be the First International Bank parking lot, that would all take place prior to the parade. I think they've got it somewhat scheduled for like 3 to 5. Then parade is at 5:30 and tree lighting immediately to follow. So.
What about, there was a couple other questions, wasn't there? They were talking about fire pits and stuff, where would those be located?
In the
most of that's pavement and stuff.
bank parking lot.
In the bank parking lot?
Mhm. Not actual fire pits, but the
No,
propane,
Right, yeah.
fancy looking ones.
Do we have any existing bigger trees? I feel like I've seen them around town, like around the community center or something. It'd be fun to do like a 50-footer someday or something, and have a big tree that we just do the same tree every year. Yeah, yep. I mean, just maybe there isn't one. I just drawing a blank at the moment.
It's not popping into my head.
Yeah. Is there one at the Veterans Park? Yeah, maybe some other year we can consider that.
And the city's, this new one that they just got to land, and that's pretty big a tree.
Yes, it is.
And that's a metal,
16 metal frame. Yeah.
and you can keep adding to it.
Right.
Oh, it's an artificial, okay.
That's like, for
Never
like,
mind then.
I know one idea with this event is to obviously keep it going year after year, and if we raise enough funds, I know there's like a star that you can be purchased to put on top and more sections to make it bigger type
That'll
of
be
thing.
the tree that they're going to.
Correct. Mhm.
Guess I entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion for the outdoor event request to be approved for the Christmas parade on November 30th.
Motion by Johnson.
A quick question, does that include one way or the other on the city co-sponsoring so that the event would be covered in their insurance?
Did they ask for that, or?
They're looking, but I know from last year, it's a real challenge for organizations to get event insurance if they're not established group.
The Chamber of Commerce also has event insurance now.
I don't know if they've talked to the chamber or not, but,
No.
okay. Okay, so let's just postpone that part of it, and we can always come back.
Always come back to that.
Yeah.
Okay, for the insurance.
So I have a motion from John, I believe, and a second from Roy, correct? Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. That motion carried. All right. Number 8, consider approval of resolution 1967, appointing election judges for the 2024 general election on November 5th, 2024.
The list of judges are in your packet on page 11. I would recommend approval of that.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by John, second by Mary. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item number 9, consider approval of resolution 1968, accepting the offer that MNPFA to purchase a general obligation water revenue note, Series 2024A, in the original aggregate principal amount of $324,330.
So a copy of that resolution is in your packet, and basically this is the drinking water funding that we were approved for with PFA, and so it's basically funding that half of the project, 20-year 1% loan, so good, good rate. Recommend approval of that.
A motion by Roy, second by Mary Jo. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Next to item number 10, consider approval of resolution 1969, authorization to execute Minnesota Department of Transportation grant agreement for airport improvement.
To get to the beginning of it, this is for our new T hangar project, which will be built next spring. This is the state portion of the funding. So basically 5% of the project cost, about almost $48,000 of grant dollars.
I'll move 1969.
Second.
Motion by Doug and a second by Blake. To approve resolution 1969. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. It brings us to item number 11, which is to discuss City Code Chapter 6, animals.
So I think we can kind of cut to the chase. Most of this is related to cats. You know, it's no mystery that there are, you know, stray dogs that occasionally run around and bark and, you know, that kind of thing. But I think the impetus for the discussion here tonight is largely with the stray or feral cat population that at least appears to have increased in the community. I know that I don't recall there being as many, you know, concerns or issues with it in the last 15 years. So I think Joel was here a couple of weeks ago. I know Mary Jo had a number of conversations related to cats in her neighborhood, and got, you know, cats down around where the Quantzes live. And Dr. Markison was willing to come today just to, you know, kind of talk a little bit. You know, you see a cat, what do? You know, you trap it, the police pick it up and haul it down to the vet clinic, what happens, and the whole discussion about, pros and cons of feeding these stray cats, feral cats, and, kind of what that life cycle tends to be. So, I don't know. Dr. Markuson, if you have a prepared speech?
I have no prepared speech.
Could you turn on your microphone and slide it a little closer to you so we can get you on candid camera here? There you go.
I have no prepared speech. The current state of affairs, stray cats are trapped. If they're truly feral, they are hauled to the vet clinic, and they're wild animals. We keep them for the required number of days to give an owner a chance to come and get them, which they have no owner, so if that doesn't happen, and then we either have to rehome them, find them an adoptive home, or put them to sleep. And these totally wild cats that are not pets and aren't going to be pets, we end up just putting them to sleep after we cage them for 5 to 7 days. And in my mind, that's cruel. I mean, you catch this wild animal, you cage it for a week, and then you kill it. And I have said to several members of the council that if people are going to feed stray cats, we are going to have more stray cats. And the cats will reproduce faster than you can trap them. So I don't see an answer in just trapping and killing cats. It's cruel. It's a waste of resources. The more you feed a species of animal, whether you're talking about deer or turkeys or fish, if you provide food, water, shelter, and a good place to be, they will reproduce at a higher rate, and you'll have more of them. I have had in my office people who feed cats, who love these cats, who want to continue feeding cats. And I have other people who detest these cats and have been shooting at them, swearing that they're going to poison them. And I do not have an answer to what we should do. Right now, I believe it is illegal to have an animal in the city limits unless you have it under your control. You can't allow your dogs or your cats to run loose throughout the city. But these animals have no owners other than, do the people who feed them, are they their owners? Should we go there? I don't know. I mean, we've talked a little bit about trap, neuter, and release, but according to the way the ordinance is written, I can't spay or neuter an animal and turn it loose in the city. It's against the law. If it's my animal and I turn it loose in the city without keeping it on my property and properly taking care of it, I'm in violation. So I guess I ask, if we're feeding stray cats, do those make them owned by the people who feed them? And are they therefore responsible to keep them home and out of trouble? And this is not a new question. Larger cities than Staples struggle with this all the time. It's a constant struggle in Wadena and Brainerd and even in Minneapolis and St. Paul and Fergus Falls and Bertha and Hewitt. Everyone's struggling with it. And there's been talk about these stray animals are causing fleas and infestations. And then two, as long as I'm complaining, the feeding of these feral cats also leads to the feeding of raccoons and skunks and even rats and mice. If you throw a bunch of food, you're going to get all kinds of animals visiting your feeding stations. So I wish I had an answer, but I don't, and come here to see what you folks think we should do and if we can come up with something that everyone can agree upon.
I personally, well, Kathy, you and I have talked. And I personally think that if people have these feeding stations in their yard, and they have beds for them, they leave their garages open for them, that's their cats. They're belonging to them now. And I know the one we've talked about has been told not to feed the cats. And on my way up here, there's a big red container there, and there's a black and white cat eating out of that container. You know, so I mean, we have to go, I think, to the people that are doing it. Because if you just keep trapping them, it's gonna continue. I mean, I watched them deliver some to the house today. And it's not fair to the animals, but it's not fair to us. You know, I have little ones running out in the yard, and some of these cats, they are not afraid of anything. And now there's like this size, and there's this size, and there's this size. And it's not gonna quit unless we go after the people that are feeding them.
I agree with you, and also, you know, people who have children or flower beds or gardens. These cats are using the kids' sandbox for their sandbox. And they're digging in the gardens and using your garden for their toilet facilities. And then when you go out there to garden, it's disgusting.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, I think the ordinance could be tweaked, you know, and I don't know exactly, if it's a fine you have to give these people, but I don't know if they'd listen to that either. But this person had to cover a hole in his garage, which he did. But now he's got his garage door propped open, and I watched this cat crawl right out from underneath it. It's like, I want to go kick it, but it's his property, and I'd be arrested for it. You know what I mean? But I've had 15 cats that you know that. In my yard and in my shed, I don't want that. If I wanted a cat, I'd have a cat. They're just, it's not fair to them either. You know, I don't know what to say, but I think we need to relook at the ordinance, and we need to determine the way to follow through. But I think we can't just forget about it. I think it's gotten past that point. It's not fair to have a cop come and pick them up. The cops have picked up a couple that I was scared to death for that poor cop with that thing in his hand, you know? Just not good for anybody involved.
Seems to me that when I read through the ordinance that it is spelled out pretty well that it's unlawful for any person to own or harbor dogs or cats when they see them without having first-hand license. So, if these people are doing what it sounds like they are breaking this ordinance. Doesn't need to be changed at all, but my question would be the enforcement of it. How do we enforce this particular part of it?
Not very easily.
Okay, so is that our problem then? Is it we have it spelled out, but we don't know, we can't enforce it?
Right, and we have to do the test of will this hold up in court. There's a lot of things that make common sense to us that we'd like to do that we can't do. And, the easy answer is we'll charge the person that's feeding them, but now that person says, well, that's not my cat, or I was feeding my cat and these stray cats came in and ate my cat's food. There's just a million variables. And trust me, I want the cats gone too. But putting them in our car is not the answer either, because we're tired of scrubbing cat urine out of the back seat of our cars.
So these offenders, are they openly admitting that they have cats that they're feeding? It sounds to me, I know one gentleman that I've spoken with on multiple occasions does not deny the fact that he's feeding these cats. So he's openly acknowledging that he's feeding these cats because he doesn't want them to starve, but irregardless, he's openly admitting that he's breaking the ordinance, without any, he's not saying that they're not his cats, they're not saying anything, he's just saying that he's feeding these cats, and so I don't know.
And we could look at it, on a case-by-case basis, I suppose. I know in Joel's neighborhood, 2 different people that feed cats. And one lives in the county, one lives in the city. And I know that I've been told the one that lives in the city takes the cats and gets them spayed or neutered and brings them back to his house. And the other one, I have no idea, the one in the county, but there is a lot of cats over there. I don't dispute that. But
I think they're all over.
they are.
They're all over.
Was the mild winter this past year, is it part of the reason they exploded, do you think? Were they this bad last year also, or is, they were?
It's been ongoing for a long time. I had a couple of police officers over at my house, and he knocked on me, he got it turned around, so if you want to shut me down, that's fine, but, you know, like tonight coming here, I read about Kansas. Leave my house, and before I'm 600 feet away from my house, I found 8 cats. And none of them are owned by supposedly anybody. But we've got one person bringing them in, and part of his property is not in the city limits. And that's from what the neighbors and I can tell, that's primarily where they're, I'll say, housing. But they yelled in across the street to the other gentleman's place. And I talked to one officer one time and said, I mean, this is over a year ago, and I said, I'm paying well over $3 grand in property taxes, but yet I have cats that aren't mine doing whatever in my yard. And I'm tired of it. And that's when he used to have his garage door open like 4, 5, 6 inches. And so the officer went down, politely talked to him, and said, you know, we really need to change that around. So he changed it. He's got his garage door shut, but he's got a cat door cut in the side of his garage so they can come and go as much as they want. Now, there was at least one skunk that was living in there with him, and one of my neighbors took that skunk out. You know, on the way here, I talked to another neighbor, and he said he just found another, I'll say, kitten more than anything else dead in his yard. And, you know, I feel for Kathy, but I feel for every taxpayer in our I don't understand, but I feel for all the taxpayers because every time we have a cat issue, it doesn't matter if it's at the vet clinic, if it's at the police. You've got hours of time in taking care of these, and who's paying for it? Every taxpayer in town. And I mean, really, you can look at it however you want, but it's absolutely disrespect, period. And as a kid who grew up in this town, I had lots of people, including Mr. Case, at different points in time that had discussions with me on the proper way to respect people or talk to people or whatever. You know, I was grounded more as a kid than anything else due to whatever, you know. We've got a small town, and if you're not going to respect your neighbors, well, it's going to get around before long, and why should we pay all kinds of money for all kinds of animals? If you want to have them, move to a farm somewhere. I mean,
Sorry.
yeah.
Is it legal for us to have the trap out there and then take them out in the country somewhere and release them? Because I've heard a lot of people in the country that say, dang, person dropped this cat off by my driveway. So
I don't think the county has anything about, I guess I'm not sure what they have for ordinances.
I mean, if we can't do anything with the people that are feeding them, I would think I could take 100 pictures every time there's a cat sitting there, and when that cat gets in my trap, I could take it to this person and say, well, if it's not yours, why is it at your house being fed outside, you know? So if that's not the case, can we trap it and take it somewhere out in the country?
I think if people live out in the country might not care for that.
No, I'm sure they wouldn't. So, I mean, we gotta figure out an answer. I mean, we gotta do something.
Well, and two issues that I wanted to address with this, when you mentioned that house, I know exactly which house you're talking about over by you. But for example, not only are they feeding these cats outdoors, but when you walk by it,
Yeah,
it smells terrible. That's an issue in itself.
But isn't that the problem though, Gerald and I have had this because they're not living in there? So that you can't really call the Animal Humane Society or whatever, because, I mean, there's a lot of cats in that house. They have huge-
From a welfare standpoint, there's no occupants, in the structure, so it's not like a vulnerable adult type situation. As far as getting health and human services involved.
Right. And the other issue that I wanted to address is it's not just stray cats. My two closest neighbors, they have cats, and I know they're their cats. Trigger my alarm system almost every single night. And I know exactly where those two cats live and get fed. And I got plenty of videos to show it too. So,
Be enforceable.
so it's more than just strays at this point.
That particular situation though would be, I would think would be, if you've got evidence of the cats roaming and stuff.
Right.
And they're owned by somebody, that's an issue for sure, but it's versus the cats that are perpetuating.
But if they're saying they don't own them, Ron, then what, how does that, I mean, that's the problem. I showed Gerald pictures, I've come in here steaming and shown him pictures of 3 or 4 cats sitting in my yard.
But would your neighbors claim that they're your cat, that they belong to them?
I would assume so.
So your situation.
Right.
Owners that.
Yeah, so I mean, in that case, if they were trapped and taken.
That would be like a running at large, if it's like got a collar and a tag on it. That would be more of a running at large issue.
Right.
And those would be the likely ones where if they were taken down to that clinic, the owners would
Claim them back.
pay the boarding.
Right.
It says that if you were to enforce these ordinances, they're charged with a petty misdemeanor. What is that?
It's the lowest level of offense.
What is that?
It's the lowest level of offense, so they'd get a fine.
It would be fine. And none of these, like these people that we're talking about, none of them has been able to enforce that, even that fine on them yet. Is that right?
I mean, the last time we served the guy in the house you're referring to on Second Avenue, we served him and under the nuisance order. Most of the problem is the cats are going inside the house where I can't kick in the door and go get feral cats. So there, a lot of them are outside, but we served them a nuisance order to clean up anything that harbors this cats. He had like a Rubbermaid tote that had a hole cut in it for them to sleep in. And then he had food dishes out. And it was actually one of the neighbors that said she was feeding them. And I'm like, you need to stop or we're going to charge you. And she's like, go ahead. They're not going to starve. And she, that mentality that you're not going to, we might stop them from feeding them there, but they'll just go feed them somewhere else. And we can try, but it's not going to.
You could charge them, fine them. Doesn't mean they're going to stop doing it.
These certain people, it might work for some people, but certain people, they're not gonna.
Well,
They'll get a $100, $200 fine. They're not gonna stop feeding the cats.
So how can we help you, or how can we help? I mean, does it seem like the enforcement part of it is a difficult part?
Well, I think, these situations where they're feeding them outside, the burden of proof is gonna be to prove that they own that cat and they're deliberately harboring this wild cat. And there's a lot of defenses they can use. And I'm not saying, I don't think they should be doing it at all, but in court, we have to be able to prove that that person fed that animal. And it was, so.
Yeah.
Another option, and I've talked, quite a bit with our city attorney about this, and, we can amend the ordinance to allow for administrative fines, which keeps it out of the judicial system, unless it progressed with some kind of an appeal to district court. But where people just do administrative fines, and if they want to appeal that, they appeal it to the city council.
What is an administrative fine? I'm talking before, but, so that's, it's still a dollar amount that they're fined, just like they are, but it's just the way it's being fined and their recourse to appeal it.
If, at least initially, keep it out of, Todd County District Court. I'm sure the judge is gonna look at the docket and see it, feeding a feral cat case coming and probably put us in jail instead of the person feeding the cat.
And then what do we do with repeat offenders? Because more than likely, these people are gonna be fined multiple times.
I mean, you can keep the fines going.
That they would be fined that amount over and over and over again.
So if they don't pay them,
Yeah, what happens if they don't pay them, yeah?
they probably don't pay them, right?
More than likely assess it.
Probably don't pay them, the fines.
I know it used to be where if they didn't pay the administrative fee, we could charge them and then have it go through court, but charge them separately.
Just trying to think of the best way to get at them. Usually money does that. There's usually the. What? Joel, yes.
But does that just cover somebody that you can prove ownership with?
Well, I mean, I don't know. That's what we're talking. For me, it seems like the enforcement issue is the biggest thing. And it could be that we could be limited on how much we can enforce it based on that, yeah.
Because one neighbor has calls on, from what I understand, non-city property.
Right. Nothing we can do about that, I don't think, is there?
And the other one, and that's the one that keeps bringing them in all the time. And I don't know if he brought them in or if one of the stray cats had a litter, but there was about 12 or 15 kittens all over the place there the other day. One of them actually attacked one of my dogs, but that didn't end well for the kitten. But anyway, the other guy who's in the city limits and keeps on feeding them. I mean, I don't wish harm on anybody or whatever, but, a few years back, I had a fantastic black lab that decided a couple of different times to go home with some neighbor kids. And one of the police officers knew it just by looking at it. And he stopped and opened the back door of the police vehicle, the dog would get in, he'd bring it over to my place. And, whose responsibility is it to keep track of that dog? Well, it was mine. I took it pretty serious. I didn't beat the dog, nothing. That doesn't do any good, but finally trained him to stay at home rather than running out. Everybody says, well, you can't do that with cats. Well, you can't do it with cats, then get rid of the cat.
Is there any way if we find someone, say $200, can we take that $200 and put it towards euthanizing 5 cats or however many cats that would euthanize? $200 may not be enough to deter them from future feedings, but knowing that they had to pay $200 that went towards euthanizing 5 cats may sting a little more. They may say, that maybe I should stop feeding them and because they're.
What if they don't pay the $200?
Well, we would assess that. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, I believe that we could.
But Kathy, didn't you say by state law you have to keep that cat that's brought to you for 5 days before you euthanize it?
Yes. The person who may have lost a cat
Yes, 5 days.
has to be able to reclaim it. You can't just gather up a bunch of stray animals and kill them and not give their owners a chance to get them back.
Yeah, the moral of this problem is that
You can talk to the police about that, Joe.
I haven't tracked another one. I've cut out a lot of them, but I was waiting for this day to find out what we can do and.
I think that cat feeders can breed cats faster than you can trap them.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that. I mean, I can go over there every day, 3 times a day, and I can take pictures of this cat, these cats being fed and the feeder
So wouldn't that be enough to enforce, wouldn't that be enough to enforce the ordinance on that person that she took pictures of? No. Suppose you're talking about the ifs and buts.
Hypothetically, yes, but again, there's a lot of variables and I don't know if that's the answer because, and
What about,
I think it could be part of the answer, but even the court, I mean, now we're gonna wait 3 to 6 months before that person gets into court, might get a fine. By that time, they've probably already replaced their cat food.
do we limit the number of cats you have on your property like we do chickens?
We used to have that in the ordinance, but
So if you went onto somebody's property and they had more than the allowed number of cats, they're already in, doesn't matter who they belong to, if they're on their property, they're in their garage, they would be in violation. But then you're still talking about enforcement.
right.
It's hard to enforce though, because what if Joel has 10 on his property then? I said, that's hard to enforce though, because they could just be gathered on someone's property.
Joel's not gonna let 10 stay on his property for very long.
It sounds like he's got 10 there all the time.
Joel, you don't let 10 stay on your property, do you?
Well, the only way they stay there is if I'm not home and I'm not always home.
Well, right.
But I've also heard that discharging a firearm inside the corporate limits is unlawful. I have no desire to really be in trouble with the chief, but I could,
Yeah.
I'm not sure she'd do more damage to me than my wife would, but either way, you know,
Yeah.
is that the only answer, taking care of things? You know, then there's always a chance that there's some kid around that, you know, is gonna watch you get rid of that animal. I mean, that's not good.
No, I don't think anybody here is in favor of shooting cats.
So, yeah,
No, you're the only one. So I mean,
but there's only so many things you can do, and trying something is better than doing nothing, but it's a respect thing that if you don't have respect for anybody but yourself, you're gonna do your own thing and you're
I think
not gonna care.
I think there's some level of disrespect for the city and the citizens of the city. If someone chooses to propagate the species like that, like some of them are. I know the one gentleman, I've spoken with him. So I do believe that that's, somehow we have to make them understand that there is a level of disrespect, that they think they're doing this animal or these animals a service, but in essence, they're disrespecting the law and the other citizens of the city. And I don't know how we get that across.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but there was one other thing that I had thought of because of being on planning and zoning for some time. In their rules and regs, there are so many animal units per square foot that you're permitted. Therefore, some people can have chickens, and there's reasons for, you know, not having an abundance of cattle that, you know, in town, because you have the leftover that you have to get rid of. Would there be a possibility that maybe that could be redesigned in the future to include cats?
You mean limited numbers?
I think you're referring to, you know, some of the language in the egg zone stuff related to livestock, but, and you know, those of you that have been around longer than I have, I know that there was a planning and zoning meeting where it was proposed to limit the number of cats and dogs. But was that ever in place?
I think the place got filled up with people, and with pitchforks and bats and everything else, so it kind of got dropped. I think that's how that went, if I remember right. But I guess, first off, I've kind of been through this ordinance a few times, but I don't see anything in there about feeding cats unless something, there's a hidden meaning here somewhere. So in order to charge somebody, it has to be part of the ordinance, so we're gonna have to do something about that, I would think.
It does say that there's something in here that was.
I didn't see anything about specifically
It's
feeding,
not
harboring, but that,
harboring, so that would be.
does that mean feeding, or does that mean keeping them in your, to me, that means confining them or having,
Well, I know house.
filling your house. But I guess the other thing that comes to mind then, when are we gonna start talking about feeding birds and squirrels?
When they,
And, what next? I mean, I guess I understand it's a problem, but there's a lot of people that feed birds and squirrels too.
birds aren't a nuisance, last time I heard.
They are when my car's parked outside. when they- So,
I think, unless they're gonna talk.
some people got different levels of, what constitutes a nuisance.
I think we really need to look at it and find something to change in there, whether it's caught feeding outside, I don't know.
Well, but Mary Jo, it doesn't matter what we put in here, because like, there's another thing down here, it says, it says, manner of keeping, no person shall keep any dog or cat or animal in the city in unsanitary place, and a manner resulting in objectionable order, such as the way it constitutes. I mean, we've got 3 or 4 different statements in here that cover everything we talked about. We just are having trouble with enforcement, and we can't, so I don't know how we get to the bottom of it, but
It also talks about license required.
there's lots of different things here that we have that these
And
require.
if the cat is not licensed, it's.
It's not my cat.
Exactly. Keeping isn't, I mean, there's nothing in there that covers feeding, it being illegal. It wouldn't hold up in court, I'll tell you that right now. But we can change that, but keeping doesn't constitute that, there are people that are not keeping them, they feed them, and.
To me, that would fall into the heading of harbor.
What's that?
To me, that would fall into the heading of harbor.
They're coming from your garage.
Or it falls under the heading.
I guess I don't know, maybe it would be, maybe they'd give you a broad brush to paint that on there, but
No, Doug,
I
it says
don't,
maintain is feeding.
maybe.
They're gonna come back with the same argument that Missy's, it comes back to enforcement, because you still have to be able to prove that whether they're feeding, harboring, whatever the hell they're doing, you gotta prove that they're doing it, and it's breaking the ordinance, so you can fine them.
Well, if it's on their property, they're doing it. That's the way we gotta have it on there. If them food dishes are on their property, whether they're their cats or not, they're not their cats, why do they have cat food out there to eat?
Maybe they have one cat that they feed, and the cats come. I don't know, Missy's got,
I
Missy
can
heard
give
it
you an
all.
example, that house you're talking about, it's not him feeding the cats, it's the neighbor across the street. She comes over with bags of cat food.
Yeah, and the one.
And I've caught her and I've talked to her many times about it. And she's like, go ahead and charge me, I'm not gonna stop feeding them.
Yeah, I think that's the same, the gentleman I've spoken to, he's pretty much along the same lines, do whatever you wanna do to me, I'm done with feeding them.
Right.
So,
What are we gonna do when we're overrun with cats? The vet decides, I can't have these wild animals tearing apart my back room, getting loose out of their cages. And she doesn't want to accept them anymore, and some of them are very understandably not wanting to accept. Then what do we do?
Missy, is there anything that you could suggest?
I wish I had an answer.
Okay.
I can tell you that every one of the officers is beyond sick and tired of picking up cats. That's our office, that car is our office, and we pick them up, and the first thing they do is pee back there, or worse, and you get to drive around the rest of your shift smelling that, or go scrub it for how long to get it out. There's not an easy answer, but.
They do that in my office for a week.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's,
What's our next steps here then? We could talk about this for a couple hours here, but what should be our next steps? Does anybody have any concrete suggestions that you wanna?
I like Daryl's suggestion on the administrative fines. Place to start.
If they're not gonna pay it, that's.
But then you can assess it.
I can explore that a little bit more to find out what happens if they don't pay it. Can we assess it for sure? I believe that we can. And I think, coming up with actual definition in the ordinance of what harboring and maintaining, is, because I think those two, without doing the other, we're gonna run into a challenge, whether it be, on appeal or otherwise, but.
Yeah, because like
Feeding
Nancy said too, is you're not just feeding the cats, you're feeding other animals out there too. That's so true.
Well, there's that, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Markuson, but I think the, cats that are just like, a wild animal out in the woods, if they're, have to work hard to get food, sometimes they don't get food, they don't have as many offspring.
Right.
So if they're living on mice, they're not gonna have a 12 kitten litter.
If we could eliminate the feeders, you think the problem would be, that would be a huge move in the right direction? I know it's hypothetical, but.
Would probably help. I don't think it's the answer to everything. I mean,
Well, if you did that, how long is it gonna take to see results? If you do something like that, how long is it gonna take to see results?
No, I don't know that we're gonna have anything that's gonna show us fast results right now, because it seems like it's out of hand, so.
Because it appears to me the results that we are gonna see is just the number of cats just climbing.
I think I guess I think we missed the point here, and I'm not for or against it, I guess, I don't know, but animals, if we have a bad winter, we get $2 million helicopters to drop hay bales for the deer, so that then they can flourish and continue to thrive, and only to eat your flowers out of your flower garden and your apples off your apple tree, and animals inherently all cause damage. And I'm serious about the squirrels and the birds. My lawn is full of, not that I have a beautiful lawn and I really don't care, but I've got an oak tree. My yard is full of squirrels all the time. They bury nuts, then they dig them back up. And it goes on and on and on. And they're all animals, and people have different, they like all different kinds of animals. And I know I very well remember the discussion, and you should too, with all the, about the dogs and the cats and the limiting the number and all this other stuff. And I just, we're not just talking about cats here, we're talking about all animals.
We are talking about cats. We are talking about.
Well, I understand we're talking about cats. I understand we're talking about cats.
So we don't talk about squirrels.
We don't.
We're not talking about squirrels right now.
Well, let's
We're
talk
talking
about
cats.
squirrels.
We're talking about cats, and we're trying to get that problem under control. Joel, go ahead.
When a squirrel goes through my yard or your yard, other than if you see it, is there anything that squirrel leaves behind that you can obviously see or smell or deal with?
We're getting off.
If a deer walks through my yard, I can see its droppings. It hardly ever happens. But I can guarantee you, there's been 20 different times in my yard where a cat has come in and used it for its box to defecate in and everything else. And I'm done, period. If this group doesn't come up with an answer, I will come up with an answer. If you wanna call me a vigilante against cats, great, I don't care. If people wanna have 40 cats and have them in their house or in their yard, take care of them, fantastic, that's wonderful. But if somebody's just gonna keep bringing them in and let them run all over and do whatever the hell they want, it's gonna end.
Well, I think we just, I mean, we're not absolutely showing nothing's gonna get settled here, but I don't know if we can get together or people can think of suggestions.
Well, let's work on administrative fees.
Right.
That Joe can check on administrative fees and, you know, what that means from the standpoint of, assessing them and non-payment or payment.
That's not free, because the way the administrative system works, unless it's changed, I don't know, I've been out of the business for a while. But the way the administrative citation system works is that if you are issued one, then the city has to assemble a 3-panel judge or three people, and they have to hold a hearing on it if the people request it. It's not just we give you a ticket, you pay it.
Well,
That's not how it works.
and from my very brief conversation with Joe Kruger on that, you know, I'm pretty sure he was suggesting that the appeal, or at least the initial appeal, would be to the city council on an administrative fine.
I think,
But I can bring more information back to you guys here in a couple weeks on that.
I thought there's ordinance that covered that, and it told how that all.
Well, but it has to, you know, that ordinance establishing the administrative fine had to specifically cite the code section that we're talking about here, you know, for it to be applicable. So, I mean, we do have, you know, provisions for administrative fines, but I don't know that they cover, you know, the animal at large or harboring stuff, so. But I can check on that, and we can, you know, propose some definitions so that everybody's on the same page. What does harboring mean? What does maintaining mean? You know, that type of thing.
Yeah, that's what we
And
would
then we
be
can-
a lot better clarification.
I don't think there'd be any impartiality in the city council, I wouldn't think. I would think that would be subject to more challenges if you use the city council for the.
Well, again, I'll check on that. I'm not sure, because I know that there are
Has to be
certain things where there is appeals, a panel that has to be established. But I just don't know that this would be one of them. I can find out.
I also feel for the officers because their job should not have to be
No, I agree with you.
picking up cats and dogs. And maybe we got a building inspector, maybe we need a dog catcher and cat
Oh,
catcher.
jeez.
Did we ever had a dog catcher? Has it always been the police? Has it always been the police?
Yes. And then, you know, maybe we
As a
need,
kid, there's a dog
maybe
catcher.
we need to hire somebody. And I don't know what we're gonna do with them all, because.
Cost the city even more.
We used to pay
Community
get paid $5 for
Yeah.
picking up dogs. We used to get paid to do it.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Well, I think we'll,
We'll
I
bring
think
some
we'll,
stuff back for more conversation.
have Joe come back with a little bit more on that and,
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, Kathy.
Yeah, they don't have
Thank you.
$150,000 a year.
all right. We're gonna move on to item number 12.
It'll be lunchy.
Committee reports. First one is Staples Economic Development Authority. Lucas.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for putting up with me over Zoom this evening. I just wanted to give you a couple of quick updates. The EDA board has been having some very good ongoing discussions about finding an economic niche and brand for the community. And if you feel like I've brought this up a couple of times, it's probably because you've also been seeing it in the Staples world, which is also fantastic, right? So it's garnering some interest. We had a discussion on that exact same topic at the LEAP board meeting as well. And there's been some conversation with Tim Rice about potentially expanding that, using some of LEAP's resources to potentially bring in the broader community into that discussion. I hope we'll have more for you guys to tell you more in the future, but for right now, we'll leave it at that. We had a really great presentation by Colleen Frost. A huge thanks to her. She came in and gave some context to the EDA board about the historic aspects of Staples and how important they are to the community, mentioning the multiple buildings that we have on the National Register of Historic Places, the old Jefferson Highway, and sort of stressing how important Highway 10 is to travelers coming through, and that might be a really important avenue for economic growth and development going forward. Other than that, I wanted to let you know that Small Cities is underway. We've gotten billed for the second project on residential homes, so only 28 more to go, and we'll be all done with that. And then just a couple of other quick notes. There is a DEED Workforce Summit this weekend in Duluth that I intend to go to. And then this morning I was on a Minnesota Extension webinar talking about the unpreparedness of Minnesota business owners to transition their businesses to new owners, and talking about how few of them have a plan in order to facilitate that transition. And it's gotten me thinking that I should probably get some materials put together for local business owners to give them. So we're working on that. And then the last thing I'd like to mention is that I had the opportunity to be the hay cart driver on Saturday for the Chamber of Commerce's Oktoberfest. And it was a very enjoyable experience. I drove in a circle around Pine Grove Park about 100 times. But it was a lot of fun. I was really glad to do it. So hopefully they'll do it again next year. So that's all I have. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions? I think we're all good. Thanks, Lucas.
Thank you.
That moves us to Public Works. Scott.
First item is we have pay requests submitted for the Second Street Northeast project, the water and sewer project. This will be the final pay request, and the commission recommended approval, and so we are looking for the same thing from the council.
I'll make a motion for the approval of change order number 1.
Second.
We have a motion from John, second by Mary. Is there any discussion or questions about that? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay, that's all the official business I have, so next item, we did our own pigging project with city staff. It was on the week of the 23rd. We did 2 blocks on Dakota Avenue, and we had limited success. The first block we did all right. We were able to get the pigs through pretty well. The second block, it was pretty tough. We had large pieces of iron coming out of the hydrant, and so that leads me to believe that we probably need to review and possibly expand the project on the south side. We put a lot of effort into getting those pigs through those water mains, and who knows how much corrosion is built up in those pipes. This winter, I'll probably be looking at, expanding the plan for the south side water and sewer project.
Do you think your lack of success was just trying it for the first time and not really knowing what you guys were doing, or?
No.
No offense, I mean, just,
No.
we all try things for the first time, and
I think some of the size of some of the pieces that came out kind of led us to believe that there's probably more corrosion built up than we're realizing.
I just happened to stop by, it was not part of town, and they were showing me the process of chunks and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they look like rocks, like about that big coming off, and so they're built up on the pipe, and you know, you sit there and you know, the guys are, you send the water this way and then you wait for a long time for that pig to come, and then you can't get it, and then you have to go around, switch valves, push it back, you know, and I mean, you're taking hours and hours, and you know, an entire workday just to get it one block. You know, and that's not even it's not even taking a 4-inch pig, it's not even a 3, you know. We're sending 2-inch pigs down first, and then we did get 1 3-inch pig down, but the second block, we spent all day to get the 3-inch pig out. And then the third block, we weren't able to do because of a broken hydrant, but by that time, it was already the end of the week. We were already behind. So unless there's any questions there, like I said, I'll be looking at expanding the amount of water mains that we do on the south side for our next project. And then we installed the generator for the street shop. So the generator itself isn't installed on it, but it's ready to be hooked up. And we did hook it up and test it. So public crew is able to operate during an emergency. And then we've talked about the water node project. We did not get as many nodes installed as we thought we would, and because of the amount of meters that we had to install. But the contractor did have to actually cancel some appointments just because we didn't have the meters, and so those folks are calling me, and then our own staff will make those appointments this winter. And then the last thing I have is Missouri River annual meeting, or the area meeting will be held on October 23rd. It's a good meeting. It's pretty informational. So if anybody would like to attend, let me know and I can get you signed up.
Where's that at, Scott?
It's in Alexandria. Gerald and I are both going. So if anybody else wants to attend, let me know. That's all I have.
Any questions for Scott? Thanks, Scott. That brings us to open forum. Anyone here that would like to speak at open forum this evening? We'll move on to City Administrator's report.
Just a few items. We had a couple long-term tenants out at the airport that sold their planes and/or part of their planes in one case. We had a couple of vacant southwest-facing hangars, which are a hot commodity. People fight over those because the sun actually melts the ice, so the doors aren't froze down most of the winter. So we had a couple of our longer-term tenants that have been on the list for that side switched, and then we've got 2 additional hangars filled now with new tenants. So it's hangar space is a hot commodity, but get everybody in here before winter. Reminder, and you probably don't need me to remind you because you see all the cones of barricades. Next Monday, the railroad crossing at Highway 210 will be repaired starting on Monday. So I'm not sure if that's a 2, 3, 4 day project. Maybe they don't know either. So, but that will be really nice to actually get that done. Pickleball courts. We had heard an update at Park and Rec that some of the site work was done, and they're looking to pave, I believe, Thursday afternoon down there. So good project. Fun to see that happen, and I know a lot of pickleballers that are excited to get out there and use it. And we get a little warm up. Maybe we'll do it this year yet. That's all I have, unless there's questions.
Second. Motion by Ward, second by Mayor. All those by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Adjourned.